So there's no doubt in my mind if you played Tarkov for any amount of time, you've heard the words leg meta mentioned by your mate, or maybe seen someone do it, or maybe you've tried it yourself. The truth is this strategy is a little bit more complicated than it seems on the surface. So today we're going to be looking at how the actual strat works, why it's called leg meta, and not only just that, we're going to be having a look at some of the best rounds Tarkov has to offer and comparing some of the more budget rounds up against some of the most expensive to see, is that bit of extra money worth it, and what has the fastest time to kill when going for the legs. So first of all, why leg meta? Well, the truth is a lot of players are generally wearing thorax or head armor, and we've seen what can happen if your ammo isn't good enough in plenty of my different armor testing videos. The truth is armor penetrating rounds are expensive, and so this whole strategy revolves around buying ammo with high flesh damage but low penetration in the hope that you can bring someone down simply by shooting exposed body parts. The big plus side for a lot of these rounds is generally they're also a lot cheaper. And these don't just count as shotgun rounds as well. A lot of the decent SMG rounds can also be affordable. So people in the community will tell you to go for the legs and aim for the legs and try your best, but why the legs specifically? Well, each PMC has 440 hit points. These hit points are unevenly divided between the 7 separate sections: the left and right legs, the left and right arms, and the stomach. These are the 5 non-critical hitboxes. Damage done to a non-critical body part will not instantly kill someone unless the damage is higher than their remaining health. The other 2, the head and the thorax, are critical hitboxes. Damage to a black thorax or head will result directly in an instant kill, no matter the remaining health. This is because they are critical hitboxes. And this applies to any damage taken to the head or thorax, whether that's dehydration, fatigue, gunshot, fire, barbed wire, you name it. You can see what happens if you're dehydrated and you happen to tick out with having a black head or a thorax, or whether that's fatigue as well, will instantly kill you. But where this gets super interesting is each non-critical body part either amplifies or reduces the amount of damage spread to the rest of the body. So for an example, we're going to start with the arm. Let's say you get shot in the arm with a round that does 100 flesh. The arm would be black, taking 60 of the damage, and is now 0 out of 60. This is because the arm has 60 health points. So now that the arm is blacked, it no longer counts. So instead of having 7 body parts, essentially you now have 6. The rest of the 40 damage would then be spread across the remaining 6 body parts evenly. So let's say you're having an even worse time and you happen to get shot again in the other arm, blacking that one out as well. This means the 60 damage will be eaten by your other arm, and the 40 is now spread across 5 body parts. What you can notice is this will result in a greater amount of damage being done to the thorax and the head. That is because you have less limbs that are non-critical to damage, but more that can be spread to the critical hitboxes like the thorax and head. This is the reason surgery kits are so useful. Now imagine for a second you got shot once in the arm, healed up, but didn't get the chance to snip it back on, so it's still blacked. If you happen to get shot in the same arm again, there's actually a reduction in damage. Arms when blacked only transfer 70% of the damage to the rest of the non-black limbs, meaning shooting someone in the arms is a bad idea, and they'll essentially take 30% less damage. So that 100 damage round that you got shot in the arm with will only do 70 damage across the remaining 6 limbs if there's only 1 blacked arm. Now this is part of the reason arms can eat a lot of rounds in your firefights. And in fact, I've actually done a separate video if you guys are curious about that one. I'll link that up in the corner if you're curious about how that works and why the arms take so many rounds. Now getting shot in the stomach is actually the opposite. Instead of reducing the damage, it amplifies the damage. So the damage received will now be 1.5x the damage. So a round with 100 damage would technically do 150 damage if it hit an unarmored stomach. Now this is probably likely to mimic what it would like to be getting shot in the stomach IRL. I imagine getting shot in the stomach would be a shit way to die. But not just that, in Tarkov it makes it possible to one-shot someone with rounds like 8.5mm Magnum buckshot, and other rounds do substantial amounts of extra damage. Now just take a quick look at how quickly people die with rounds to the stomach like Quakemaker, a cheap 9x19, and also stuff like 45 ACP Hydra Shock, killing someone in 4 hits. So on paper, the best place to shoot someone is the stomach, right? Well, on paper and in raid are 2 different things. See, the problem is a lot of armors in the game cover the stomach. If you happen to run into someone with stomach protection, you're probably in for a bad time. Luckily, a lot of the popular armors this wipe, however, don't actually have stomach protection. These are like the M-Mac and the Trooper USEC armor, which don't have stomach protection. Even higher tier armors like the Slick and Hex Grid also don't. So this would be your best chance at taking someone down quickly. However, granted, you have to be a crack shot, and keeping your aim centered on such a small hitbox can sometimes be really difficult. Now, this uncertainty about what armor people are wearing and how small the stomach is why the legs remain the best place to shoot. Simply put, legs transfer 100% of the damage done, and they also guarantee a large unarmored area to shoot. That's because there's no current leg armor in the game as of 12.12. So now we know a little bit about why you would want to choose the legs. Let's take a quick look at some of the best leg meta rounds Tarkov has to offer, asking the question, is the extra money spent on these higher tier ammos even worth the time to kill? Now, quick disclaimer, however, I want to be clear that rounds lose a lot of damage over distance the further they fly, depending on their velocity. For the best results, you want to be nice and close to your target when you use this strategy. This is why all the testing today was done from close up, probably about under 5 meters away. If you are curious about this, I will link something down below called Tarkov Ballistics, where you can look at how much damage rounds lose over distance. It's a really interesting website, and I definitely recommend bookmarking it. I use it regularly to figure out what's going on with my rounds over distance. Now let's start by looking at one of the most popular categories, and that's going to be shotguns. Of course, we got to start with the KS-23. Just take a quick look at how Shrap 25 and Shrap 10 can ruin anyone's day. Shrap 10 to the knees. However, I did want to point out with the KS-23, you are going to need to land 5 out of 8 projectiles to kill someone in the legs. If you do hit them with 1 additional shot in the stomach, maybe that's enough to kick it off in about 4 hits. However, I did want to point out that this is not always guaranteed. Now, unfortunately, the devs also increased the recoil and the spread of the KS-23 by a fair bit. So this gun has a quite considerable spread at around about 30 meters. So you generally need to be about under 30 meters to someone to be able to consistently one-shot them. Now, other shotguns like 12 gauge shotguns are a little bit better over range. A common 12 gauge round is 7mm buckshot, which doesn't one-shot the same leg, but instead takes 2 shots to kill. However, I did want to point out that it does take 11 pellets out of 8 per round to kill someone. So you can see that there's a little bit of a discrepancy there. You pretty much have to hit every pellet. So generally 2 to 3 would be your most likely outcome with this round. 6.5mm express buckshot is a far more accurate buckshot with much better spread. However, it actually needs 12 out of 9 pellets per shot to kill. So you need to land 12 pellets on a target. Luckily, however, express buckshot does have better spread. When it comes down to 12 gauge buckshot, there are none better than 8mm Magnum buckshot. You guys know this round. You've seen it. You probably died to it. Let's be realistic. This round only needs 2 shots to the leg to kill, but at 50 damage a pellet, you only need 9 out of 8 per round to kill, which is interesting. If they added a slight little bit of damage buff to this, it would technically one-shot, which is pretty damn insane. However, if any of the pellets were to hit the stomach, if you were aiming for the legs at the same time, that person would die in 1 shot. This makes the Magnum buckshot a really, really good option for going down for the legs. However, I did want to point out that Magnum buckshot does have heavy spread, and it does increase your recoil by 155%. For the slug options, we could look at Superformance, but we're going to jump into Rip. I think Rip is slightly better here, and it actually 2 hits the leg with 265 damage per shot. This is a hefty slug. It's also very accurate. Next up, we have rifles, and these aren't the most popular leg meta guns in Tarkov, but they're still damn fun, and you do have plenty of different options. For 5.56x45, we have Warmageddon coming in at 85 damage. Now, this round would take about 6 shots to the same leg to kill someone. It's not terrible, however, only due to the fact that the HK 416 has a fast fire rate, generally low recoil, and large magazines. You can use 100-round mags and just go for the legs as a meme. I've personally done this, and it was a hell of a lot of fun. For 545 by 39, we've got HP. Unfortunately, it can only 6-hit the same leg, but I wouldn't recommend using this due to the AK's slow fire rate. However, you do have large magazines with 545, so that's kind of nice. Now, 7.62 by 39 has another hollow point called HP, and this one has 87 damage and can kill someone in 5 shots. However, due to the platform's slow rate of fire and also the high recoil for pretty much all of the builds, I have a hard time recommending this as an actual legit setup. 7.62 by 51 NATO is a bit of a funny caliber. Luckily, however, we do have Ultra Nozzler. Now, this round is actually pretty solid with the ability to kill a PMC in 4 shots. You could use something like the FOW with the drum mag with this build and go for the legs. However, unfortunately, rounds like M80 and going for the chest are so much better, especially with the way the meta and the level 4 armors are abundant. 300 Blackout actually had a new round, which we had the opportunity to test. This is a round that I've been eyeing off for a while, and I was kind of curious about it. This round is called Whisper, and it has 90 damage. This round was able to 5-hit the same leg, and it was really cool because it can come out of the MCX, which has fast fire rate and the ability to run large magazines. However, I did want to point out that the horizontal recoil of the MCX platform can make it quite difficult to shoot the same leg, especially over distance. Now, 366 is a popular round among budget enthusiasts. I don't even need to introduce this round to you guys. A lot of you do use it, especially AP. Gexa, however, is a cheap round with 110 damage. This round can actually 4-shot the same leg. However, its high recoil in the 209 platform makes it hard to use sometimes. However, if you treat it like a glorified shotgun and run the Vepr 209 with a 40-round magazine, this bad boy is really good for tapping legs or maybe even just tapping heads. Next up, we have one of my personal favorites for meme guns, and this is going to be PS12A coming out of the 12.7 by 55mm Ash 12. Now, the Ash 12 is a fun-ass gun to use and is one of my personal favorites. However, it's a gun that should be treated basically like a shotgun. PS12A has about 165 damage, but can 3-hit the leg. This ammo is also generally very cheap. Another cool thing about this ammo is that it's almost guaranteed to cause a heavy bleed. So generally, even if you shot someone once, they're always going to have a heavy bleed. Just for science, we also tested that the round can also 2-hit the stomach. However, there's a few problems with that. Although it's really fun to use, the Ash 12 is very heavy and slow. It also has hefty recoil. So if you're trying to use the Ash 12, you're best off using PS12B and aiming for the thorax or head. Last up for the rifle rounds, we have the Chonka itself, 338 Lapua. For this, we tested TAC X, a round with 198 damage. This round has the ability to 3-hit the same leg. But that isn't great if we consider a few things. First one is this gun is hard to get. It's only available after a late game quest to kill Sturman 25 times called Hunter. And with its hefty recoil and limited mag capacity, you'd be much better off going for FMJ and aiming for the thorax. But when it comes down to SMGs, this is where things get really spicy. Starting out with a cheap option, it is the Russian staple, the Papasha. We're going to be running the PPSH here today with LRNPC. Taking about 7 shots to kill, it does seem like a very high and slow time to kill, but I did want to point out that due to its cheap price and the high fire rate of 1000 RPM, it's no slouch. Another cheap alternative, and one of my personal favorites, would have to be the Keta or the Klin. Now, generally I run this gun with 9x18 SP7. However, you could skimp and use some cheaper ammos like SP8, PSV, or RGO28. These are all slightly worse, but considerably cheaper. For SP7, however, we saw 6 shots to kill on the same leg, with all the other alternatives needing 7 shots. So the Klin comes in with 1000 RPM, which is part of its strength, and the cool thing about this gun is it's really cheap, and you can access it quite early on. For 9x19, we have Luger CCI. Not the greatest choice, but it also is decently cheap on the flea market at times. Unfortunately, it does come in at 7 hits, which makes it a far worse option than LRNPC from the Papasha. A better option, however, for 9mm is Quakemaker. This is a subsonic hollow point. This round with its 85 damage can 6-shot the same leg. The strongest for the 9x19, however, is Rip, with its 102 damage. This will allow you to kill someone in 5 shots. However, this round is generally much more expensive, so mixing half-half with Quakemaker is a really good option. Now, 5.7 by 28mm is a really interesting round, and one of the best things you could use it with is the P90. You have two solid options when it comes to 5.7. R37X is the slightly weaker option, coming in at 81 damage, meaning it would take 6 shots to kill someone in the same leg. However, compared to its stronger cousin R37F with 98 damage, it only takes 5 shots to kill someone in the same leg. These rounds are great out of the P90 due to its fast fire rate and large mag capacity. I did want to point out that R37X and F are generally quite cheap on the flea market. Alright, so when it comes down to pistol calibers, there's none more strong than 45 ACP. This is one of the strongest options for the SMGs in general. Starting off with Hydroshock, which is a decently cheap round, coming in at 105 damage. You will only need 5 shots to kill. So when it comes down to pistol rounds, there is none more OP and none as strong as 45 ACP Rip. This has a whopping 137 damage per round, and I would definitely hate to be on the receiving end of this. I've run this gun with Rip, especially out of the Chris Vector before, and it is a disgustingly strong gun. This has the ability to 4-shot the leg, which is the fastest time to kill out of any of the automatic guns. The only downside is, however, you can only buy 90 per reset from Max Mechanic, and that doesn't last long, especially with the fast fire rate of the Chris Vector. So let's quickly recap what we just saw there and compare some of these ammos super quickly. For shotguns, we saw 1 shot from Shrap 10 and 25, 2 shots from almost all of the 12 gauge shotgun rounds. For rifles, we saw Warmageddon at 6 hits, 545 HP at 6, 7.62 by 39 HP at 5, 300 Blackout Whisper at 5, 7.62 51 Nosler at 4 shots, 366 Gexa at 4 shots, 338 TAC X at 3 shots, which was tied with PS12A for also 3 shots. For the SMGs, it was really close, with 7.62 by 25 LRMPC taking 7 hits, Luger CCI with also 7, RGO 28, SP8 and PSV all at 7 shots, SP7 with 6 shots, Quakemaker at 6, R37X at 6 shots, R37F at 5 shots, Hydroshock at 5 shots, and the winner of the pistol rounds, which probably a lot of people saw coming, was 45 ACP Rip at 4 shots. So you might be asking yourself after all that, Vox, how does this actually translate to my raids? And does this actually make a difference in practice? Is a round like SP7, which is weaker than 45 ACP Rip, that much slower to kill? Well, not really. To show you the time to kill in action, we decided to test some of the best ammos tested here today and put them in their respectively fastest firing gun. So for the test here today, we have the Clin firing SP7 at 1000 RPM, the Chris Vector firing 45 ACP Rip at 1100 RPM, the MP9N firing 9x19 Rip at 1100 RPM, and we also have the Glock 18C firing 9x19 Rip with the fastest RPM in the game, 1200. So now, let's take a look at that time to kill.
Watch where you're shooting.
So although you can see some rounds are much stronger than others on paper, the more insane ammos like 45 ACP Rip only give a couple fractions of a second quicker time to kill than something like SP7 or other rounds like PSV, which are considerably cheaper. However, I did want to point out that in your raids, sometimes those fractions of a second are the difference between living and dying. And sometimes that just faster time to kill is what you really need, especially if you don't always hit your shots. The cool thing about leg meta is I think it's the great equalizer. As you can see, plenty of guns like the Papashar, the PPSH was so much fun to use and incredibly cheap. Guns like the Keter or the Klin are some of my favorite leg slappers in the game. You can even use cheap SMGs like the PP19 and throw some Quakemaker in there and go for the legs. The truth is, leg meta is the great equalizer for a lot of people out there that can't afford the high penetration, armor-piercing rounds. However, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. Do you think the extra money spent on 45 ACP is worth it? Do you think a lot of the budget leg meta guns are simply just too good to go past? If you enjoyed this type of video and you'd like to see me do this again, let me know as well in the comments down below what type of ammo you'd like to see me test. If you guys have any questions about today's video or would just like to chat to me in general, the link for the Discord and the Twitch will be featured down below if you want to come by and chat and talk to me about anything. Thank you guys so much for watching to the very end, and as always, we'll see you on the next one.